I'm Rantasmo, and camp needs more gay. Over the last few years, I've talked about a lot of different things that, for whatever reason, have a significant queer following. From roller skating disco fantasies, to seedy erotic thrillers, to kid-friendly TV musicals, to oh my god, what the f*** even. And as disparate as some of those things might seem, a lot of them have one single quality in common, a quality often referred to as camp. But the truth is that camp is incredibly difficult to define. It's been debated and deconstructed by a lot of people who are way smarter than me, and its definition might be completely different depending on who you ask. Many will turn to Susan Sontag's highly influential 1964 essay, Notes on Camp, while others will say that Sontag got camp completely wrong. But I'm gonna do my best to give you a rough idea of what I personally understand camp to roughly mean. Roughly. When people say that something is so bad it's good, what they're usually saying is that it satisfies a camp sensibility. But I'd argue that many campy things aren't actually bad as such, but rather a different kind of good. The word camp comes from a French term meaning to pose in an exaggerated fashion. So naturally, it's a style defined primarily by exaggeration. It's not a style that necessarily relishes bad over good, but rather artificiality over naturalism, and extravagance and theatricality over subtlety. Drag shows are perhaps the quintessential example of camp performance. Drag is all about exaggeration and parody and artifice and being completely over the top. And even with drag performers who are able to more realistically pass as feminine, what those in the biz call fishiness, there's still a sense of glamour and ostentatiousness that you wouldn't see in a more naturalistic performance. Musical artists like Lady Gaga and Nicki Minaj are actual women, but in a similar way, they often perform an exaggerated, parodic version of womanhood. And that unnatural exaggeration is part of their appeal. Sometimes a thing is made more enjoyable by being more obviously artificial. Camp can be intentional, as is the case with drag or pop music, but it can also be unintentional, like an inadvertently hilarious movie that was meant to be dramatic. One might call this distinction deliberate camp versus naive camp. I sometimes see it referred to as high camp versus low camp, though I've also seen those terms used to describe how sophisticated the media in question is considered to be. Trashy reality shows, for example, might be considered low camp, even though they're often produced in an intentionally trashy way, while an elaborately costumed musical or ballet is more likely to be considered high camp, even if it was meant to be taken seriously. There's another school of thought that defines camp as pleasure derived not from artificiality, but rather nuance. I find it a little difficult to describe something like this as nuanced, but I can also kind of see where this is coming from. The impulse that compels us to obsess over a single line or a gesture found in a movie or a TV show, and to immortalize it into an endlessly looping animated GIF. I think sometimes that impulse comes from a certain camp sensibility. Camp is very much associated with the LGBT community and especially gay men. In the UK, for instance, the word camp is more often used as an adjective that describes gay men with effeminate, over-the-top mannerisms. And the things that people most consistently describe as campy, drag, American Horror Story, Lady Gaga, Showgirls, John Waters movies, so many of them tend to be things that were either created by gay men or have significant gay male fan bases. But why is that? What is it about camp that attracts gay men like flamboyant flies? One could argue that it's just a case of gay men liking the things that gay men are supposed to like based on our societal construct of the gay male experience. Like, welp, I just came out of the closet, so I guess I'll start watching Real Housewives as is required by gay law. But speaking from personal experience, I liked a lot of campy gay things before I really knew that I was gay in the first place. I suppose it's entirely possible that my attraction to men and my love of Tilda Swinton are just some sort of package deal that's been hardwired into my DNA, but the reality is probably a little more complicated than that. I actually think the secret behind camp's allure to gay men is not in its reinforcement of cultural constructs, but rather the exact opposite. It has the ability to challenge and dismantle social conventions in a very unique way. Notice how much campy media is focused on women. Powerful women, funny women, elegant women, hysterically unstable women. Oh my god, what the f*** even? Women. Part of the reason why women dominate so much of the camp sensibility is that It's often more socially acceptable for them to be flamboyant, or flighty, or glamorous in a way that society doesn't always tolerate in men. But these particular women also tend to defy the expectations that society places on them, or they poke fun at those expectations by distorting them into surreal works of art. The beauty of camp's artificiality is that it creates the perfect environment for lampooning or deconstructing things that are already artificial to begin with. Things like gender roles and heteronormativity. And there's a catharsis to camp that I think mirrors the experience of coming out, of bucking societal norms and just basking in the glow of your own weird, beautifully imperfect self. Some people say that camp has elitist or misogynist undertones, and in certain cases that may be true. But it also has the power to create something good out of something bad, even when that something involves bees.
Oh, no, not the bees! Not the bees! Ah!